So I'm born and raised in Johannesburg, South Africa. I come from a family of 5. Brother, sister are older than me. I'm the baby of the family, and then mom and dad. Very sporty family. My father actually was part of the Barcelona Olympics in 1992, and 92 was a big year for me. In 92 is where I had my accident. On the 9th of August 1992, my brother and sister decided that we should go to the Vaal and have a day out or a weekend out. The weather wasn't great for being on the water and sailing, but there was wind and things around, and we had lots of toys at the Vaal, and one of them was a land yacht. And being the youngest and the keenest, I jumped on it first. That's where I found out that Eskom had put in power lines. Essentially what happened is I would have to go underneath those lines in order to get to where I needed to be. That happened. I did not see the lines, there was no warning sign in place, and the tip of my mast touched the high power tension lines, and I was electrocuted. I had 33,000 volts of electricity go through me. I was rushed to Vereeniging Hospital, which was the nearest hospital to us, where we found out that I had actually taken out their electricity supply. The staff was very helpful, but they explained to my sister that I was too burnt and too damaged for them to deal with, and that I would need to go somewhere where there was a specialist. I was put in an ambulance to head to Baragwanath. That ambulance broke down, another came to fetch me, and eventually I made it to the burns unit. For 4 days, I was essentially checked and cleaned up to see if I would survive. And on the 4th day is where they recommended to my mom that they amputate my legs because they were the worst damaged, and the threat of infection was now the biggest risk that I faced. My father was still coming back from Barcelona, so my mom made that decision by herself, and my legs were amputated. Within a 5-day period, my life, my body, everything about what I knew had changed, and I was now disabled and would have a lot of recovery ahead and a new life to build. Once I made it out of Baragwanath and hospital, my goal was to just go back to school and get back to my life. And I was very fortunate in that I was given that opportunity. So I went back to my primary school and on to high school. And my high school experience was basically figuring out what it was like in my new body and having to adapt to being in a wheelchair, getting around school at first. And there I got my first set of prosthetics from the States and was less than impressed with them, and then got a private provider to help me out when I was 15. And that became my journey with prosthetics and realizing how they worked, and that the benefits that they gave me in everyday situations where I was now more mobile, and stairways and things that were a barrier to my wheelchair were no longer a barrier. And by the time I finished school, I was a prefect. I did the first dance at the matric dance. I was the first person in my matric year to get my car license. I was active and busy and very good on my legs by the time I left school. So I was trying to make the London Paralympics for rowing. I was at training for rowing, and I had a prosthetist arrive to help us look at the equipment and if there was anything that we could do. And Johan arrived and had a whole bunch of questions for me, as well as information about himself. And he was explaining to me that he actually started a non-profit organization aiming to help amputee kids. And he wanted them to get equipment and to be able to experience a lot of the things that I had experienced in my life. And it really struck a chord. And so I said that I'd like to mentor some of the kids, and started to talk about how do we make jumping kids into something bigger and able to help more kids and able to secure possibilities for these kids that I had had. Then let's throw in sports as well, because if we're going to give blades and high activity equipment, then why not get the kids involved and start discovering talent. So I stepped into it thinking that I was going to take a year off to do good things and discover myself. And what it really did is it let me discover my purpose and 1 year has now become 13. My work with Jumping Kids and started to have a big sporting elements involved with it. So with multiple kids, we were touching bases with different federations, with tennis, with rowing, with athletics, and then it started to create this little question in my mind as well, like what could I do? Rowing didn't work out. It became a classification issue where I thought I should be classified differently to how I was. I then went to a clinic, a camp for para kite surfing in Greece, and met a whole lot of other crazy disabled people who were also looking at trying out different sports and just had the similar outlook to what I did in life. And one of them, his name was Chris Stewart. He's an American guy who's based in Switzerland and has lived there for a very long time. He and I got chatting and became friends and stayed in contact through kite surfing. And in one of those moments where I was sitting around thinking about what should I do, what sports could I do that could get me to the Paralympics or give me more to do, I got a call from Chris. And Chris was telling me that he had just started with bobsled. And was I interested in bobsled at all? So in November, I think, of 2018, I left 35 degrees and the swimming pool to go arrive in Norway to -10, the most snow I'd ever seen in my entire life, and being thrust into a bobsled to give it a try. So none of us are going to let the injuries or the challenges stop us. We're not going to quit. We're going to do everything we can to achieve that and keep going.